It started like most endings do, with silence. My name is Daniel. I'm 34, a software engineer living in Seattle. I haven't spoken to my mother in over 5 years, unless you count the occasional birthday card or the voicemails I never returned. It's not that I don't think about her. She's always there, like static under a quiet song. But thinking and speaking are very different things when it comes to my mother. She was the kind of woman who made everything feel like a transaction. Affection came with terms, pride had strings, and every act of kindness was stored like ammunition to be referenced when I failed to meet her standards. After all I've done for you, that phrase still echoes in the back of my mind, even now. Growing up in that house was like learning to breathe through glass. Everything looked normal from the outside, but inside, every step cut a little deeper. My dad left when I was 11. He didn't say much either, just a handshake and a sad smile. After that, it was just me and her. She never remarried. She didn't need to. Her love came in bursts of control. What I wore, who I spoke to, what I studied, and I obeyed, quietly, until I didn't. I left home for college in Oregon and never moved back. Our conversations grew sparse, then hollow. I remember one year she sent me a birthday card that simply said, "Try harder." That was the moment I stopped calling. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I was just tired. Tired of trying to decode affection from someone who only knew how to manipulate. Still, every Christmas, I'd pause by my phone, wondering if she'd call. Sometimes she did. I never answered. The voicemails were always the same, cold, clipped, as if she were checking off a chore. "It's your mother, I assume you're still alive." Or, "I saw your company's stock is down. Maybe you should consider a real job." And yet, no matter how many years passed, part of me still looked over my shoulder, waiting for her voice. Not because I missed it, but because silence, when it came from her, always meant something was coming. It was a Tuesday morning in late October. Rain tapped gently on my apartment window as I sipped my coffee and scanned through emails. Mostly spam, a few work updates, and then, there it was. New listing, 3-bedroom craftsman in Green Lake, $579,000. I almost deleted it out of habit, but the photo caught me. The porch, the slope of the roof, the crooked mailbox with the dent on the side. My chest tightened. That was my house, my mother's house, the house I grew up in. I clicked through the listing. It was surreal, like someone had put my memories up for auction. Photos of the living room where I used to build Lego cities, the kitchen table where I once failed miserably at my first science project. Even the bedroom with the faded wallpaper still clinging to the walls. Nothing had changed, and yet it all felt foreign. No call, no email, no, "just so you know." She'd sold the house without telling me. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen. The coffee went cold. I read the listing 3 times, looking for some clue that maybe I'd misunderstood. But the address was clear. The realtor's contact information was at the bottom. The listing had gone up that very morning. It wasn't about the house, not entirely. It was about everything it represented. She didn't see value in telling me, in involving me, in even acknowledging that it might matter. I wasn't surprised, but that didn't dull the sting. I opened our last text thread. It was from 9 months ago. I had sent her a picture of a dog I had briefly considered adopting. She responded, "You're not responsible enough for a pet." That was the last thing she said to me. I closed my laptop and stood up, unsure what I was even feeling. Anger, maybe. Hurt, definitely. But more than anything, it was a strange emptiness, like someone had taken an old photograph from a frame and replaced it with a blank sheet of paper. She had let go of that house like it meant nothing, and now somehow it was being offered to strangers. The logical thing to do would have been to call her, ask why, ask when, maybe even ask how much she got for it. But logic doesn't apply well to people like my mother. With her, every question was an invitation to a lecture, every word twisted until it lost its shape. I imagined the conversation, her cold, calculated voice asking why it mattered. "You never came back anyway. What difference does it make?" And she'd be right, on the surface. Still, I needed to see it for myself. That Saturday, I checked the listing again. There was an open house scheduled for noon. I told myself it was just curiosity, just closure. But the truth was I wanted to stand inside those walls again, one last time. I parked a few blocks away, walked the familiar sidewalk under a gray Seattle sky. The air smelled like wet leaves and memory. When I reached the front steps, I paused. The door was wide open, voices drifting out. A young couple stood in the foyer talking to the realtor. I slipped in quietly, pretending to be another buyer. No one recognized me, of course. The realtor smiled politely. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, recently updated kitchen. Great bones. I tuned her out and walked slowly through the house. The living room still had the same crown molding. I could picture our old brown couch pushed against the wall. My mother perched on the edge, flipping through catalogues. The kitchen counters were new, but the floor still creaked in the same spot near the fridge. Upstairs, my bedroom had been painted white, but the outline of the old bookshelf still shadowed the wall. It felt like walking through a dream I no longer belonged to. I stood in the backyard for a long time. The tree I used to climb was gone, cut down. The garden beds were empty, cold soil and dead leaves. On the way out, I took one last look at the staircase. I used to sit there during storms, listening to my parents argue in hushed voices. I didn't take any pictures. I didn't say a word. I just walked out, hands in my pockets, a knot tightening in my chest, and still, I didn't call her. I couldn't shake the feeling for days. The house haunted me, not in a spooky sense, but in that quiet, nagging way a thought can sit in the back of your head, whispering, "Do something." I told my friend Noah about it over drinks one night. He's in real estate, the kind of guy who always knows someone who knows someone. We hadn't talked in a while, but catching up felt natural. When I told him the house had gone on the market without a word from my mother, he just raised an eyebrow. "She really didn't tell you? Not even a text?" He leaned back in his chair. "You know, if it means that much, you could buy it." I laughed at first. "Buy it? From her?" "No, buy it from whoever's selling it. Through me, quietly." That's when the idea lodged itself into my brain. Not out of revenge, at least that's what I told myself, but because it felt wrong that she could just erase that place from our story like it never mattered. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't want strangers sleeping in my room, tearing down the walls I once leaned against, turning it into something else. I asked Noah to look into it. Within 24 hours, he had the details. The seller was indeed my mother, no surprise, and the house was still in the early listing stage. No offers yet. It was doable. "I can handle everything," he said. "We'll use a holding name. The title will come to you through a trust. She won't know it's you unless you tell her." I hesitated. It felt petty, but also right, like reclaiming something that had been taken without consent. We ran the numbers. I could afford it. I'd been saving for a new place anyway. Might as well make it this one. That night, I sat alone with the papers Noah had sent over, the listing details, the offer template, a blank signature line, and for the first time in years, I looked at something connected to my mother and didn't feel powerless. I felt in control. We moved quickly. Noah handled the logistics. He put in the offer under the name of a shell trust he managed for quiet clients, people who didn't want their names tied to properties for personal or financial reasons. In this case, for me, it was emotional. "I've got it set up," Noah said over the phone. "She'll see an anonymous buyer. No way it traces back to you unless you tell her." "Are you sure this is legal?" "Totally. Happens all the time. Celebrities do it. Divorcees. Even paranoid tech guys like you." I laughed, more nervous than amused. Yeah, paranoid feels accurate. Within a week, the offer was accepted. No counter, no questions. She just wanted it gone. She didn't even ask about the buyer. I asked Noah. "Nope. Cash offer, clean paperwork. She probably thinks it's some investor looking to flip it." It stung, even though I'd expected it, that she could let go of it so easily, of everything that happened there. The birthdays, the storms, the long, cold silences after arguments, all of it, traded for a number on a page. The closing process took about 3 weeks. I didn't attend in person. Noah did everything. I signed documents electronically. Every line felt surreal. Seller, my mother. Buyer, the trust. Beneficiary, me. The final document, the deed transfer, came in on a Friday morning. Noah called me. "Congratulations, man. You officially own your childhood home." I didn't know what to say. I stared at the PDF, my name hidden behind legal structures, but there, quiet, powerful. It felt like having a secret no one could touch. "You okay?" Noah asked. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, I think I am." He paused. You gonna tell her? I didn't answer right away. I didn't know. Instead, I printed the deed, folded it neatly and slid it into a plain envelope. No note, no explanation, just my name, just the house. I placed it in the drawer next to my keys. I didn't know when or if I'd use it, but I knew one thing. This time the house was mine. December crept in with its usual cold drizzle and gray skies. Seattle's winter had a way of making everything feel quieter, heavier. It was around the 12th when I sat down at my desk and pulled out a card. Plain white, no decorations, no sentiment. I wrote just one sentence inside. Christmas dinner, December 25th, 7 p.m., 7149 Linden Avenue North. That was the address of the house, our house. I didn't sign it, I didn't explain. I just sealed the envelope and mailed it to her address in Shoreline, the same apartment she'd moved into after selling the home. 3 days later, my phone lit up with a text from her. I hadn't seen her name on my screen in over a year. You live there now. No greeting, no surprise, no emotion. I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, yes. There was no reply. I spent the next few days preparing the house. I had barely furnished it since the purchase. I wasn't sure I'd even live there full time, but for that night, it had to feel intentional. Not perfect, not warm, just clean, different. I put up some lights, bought a modest table, 2 chairs, ordered a pre-cooked meal from a local deli. There was no nostalgia in it, no effort to recreate our past. This wasn't a reunion, it was a mirror. The night before Christmas Eve, I placed the same envelope on the dining table, the one with the deed inside. I didn't plan what I'd say, I wasn't even sure she'd come, but when I woke up on the 25th, there was a calmness I hadn't felt in years, no anxiety, no guilt. Just silence, the kind I could finally live with. As 7 approached, I lit a single candle, set out the plates, straightened the chairs. At 6:59, the doorbell rang. 2 short chimes, precise, deliberate, just like her. I opened the door, and there she was, wearing grey, holding nothing. She stepped in, glanced around the room, and said simply, "So, this is your idea of Christmas?" I nodded once, and closed the door behind her. She walked in like she still owned the place. I stood a few feet behind her, watching her scan the room. Her eyes flicked from corner to corner, an inventory of everything that was no longer there. The family photos that used to line the mantel were gone. So was the old cuckoo clock she'd always wound religiously. In its place, only silence. She ran her hand lightly across the surface of the dining table. New? I nodded. All of it. She didn't sit. She walked slowly into the living room. The couch was simple, grey, minimal. No throw pillows, no blanket. She lingered by the window that faced the street and peered out for a second before turning back. "You took out the curtains," she said. "They were yellow," I replied. "Didn't really fit." That earned a small, humorless chuckle. "They were expensive." We stood in silence for a while. She wandered into the kitchen next. "You moved the knives. They used to be by the fridge. I prefer them by the stove." She opened a cabinet, glanced inside, then shut it again. No comment. Then she turned around and looked at me for the first time that night. Her eyes were sharp but not angry, just calculating. "You really live here?" I nodded. She tilted her head slightly. "You never mentioned wanting to come back." "I didn't." She said nothing, just looked around one more time. Her expression didn't soften, but something in her posture did. Like she realized, maybe for the first time, that she was a guest here, that the house didn't bend to her presence anymore. I gestured to the table. "Dinner's warm." She sat down slowly, methodically. I poured 2 glasses of water and took the seat across from her. We ate in silence. Knife, fork, chew, repeat. It was like dining in a museum exhibit, both of us pretending we weren't remembering. She didn't ask questions. I didn't offer stories. There was only one thing left to show her, and it was already waiting on the table. The envelope sat beside her plate, untouched. She noticed it, of course. From the moment she sat down, her eyes had flickered to it now and then, but she hadn't said a word. It was plain, no markings, no writing, nothing to draw attention except for its placement, deliberately in front of her, slightly angled, like an invitation she hadn't accepted yet. We finished eating. She dabbed at her mouth with the napkin, placed it neatly on the table and looked at me. "This meal," she said, "isn't terrible." "Thanks," I replied. I ordered it. She nodded, almost approvingly. Then finally her fingers touched the envelope. "What's this?" she asked. I didn't answer, just looked at her. She lifted the flap slowly, carefully, like it might bite. She slid out the paper inside, unfolded it, and stared. There were no theatrics, no gasp, no trembling hand. She read the first few lines. Her expression didn't change, but her jaw tightened slightly, just enough to betray that she understood exactly what she was holding. I could see the words reflecting in her eyes. Property title, transfer of deed, beneficiary name, mine. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. The silence stretched long between us. Finally, she placed the paper back inside the envelope, pressed it closed with deliberate care and set it gently on the table. She looked up. "You bought it." I nodded once. She glanced around the room again. Once more, slower this time. It wasn't just observation anymore. It was something closer to resignation. "How long?" "Since October." She absorbed that without reaction. No lecture, no demand to know why, no defense of her actions. She simply said, "You didn't tell me." And I replied, "Neither did you." That landed. Not harshly, not like a blow, but like truth, landing exactly where it belonged. She pushed the chair back slightly. Her hand rested on the table. "You always did like quiet gestures," she said, almost to herself. And then, slowly, she stood. She stood still for a moment, as if giving the room one last scan to make sure it was real. Her eyes passed over the walls, the ceiling, the floor beneath her feet. This house, which had once been hers, which had once been ours. She didn't reach for the envelope again. She didn't take it with her. Instead, she looked at me. Not long, not with warmth, just looked. There was something unreadable in her face, but it wasn't surprise. It wasn't even anger. It was the kind of stillness you see when someone's trying to decide what not to say. I waited. I didn't move, didn't ask anything. She reached for her purse, black, leather, structured, and slung it over her shoulder with the same graceful finality I remembered from my childhood, when she used to end conversations with movement instead of words. No hug, no parting comment. She walked toward the door. Her heels clicked softly across the floor, 14 steps from table to entryway. The same number I used to count as a kid when sneaking out to get water past bedtime. She opened the door, let in a brief gust of cold December air, and paused with one hand on the handle. For a split second, I thought she might turn around, might say something to wrap this all in a ribbon, even if it was a lie. But she didn't. She stepped out, pulled the door closed behind her, and was gone. No slam, no dramatics, just a quiet exit. I stayed seated. There was no music playing, no sounds outside, just the faint hum of the fridge and the candle flickering on the table. The envelope sat between our empty plates. I reached out and turned it once, slowly, until it faced me again. It felt lighter than before, the kind of weight that lifts when you stop hoping for an apology. She had come, she had seen, she had left, and for the first time in years, that was enough. The next morning I woke up earlier than usual. The house was still. The kind of stillness that used to make me uneasy, back when quiet meant tension, when silence meant something had gone unsaid and was waiting to explode. But this silence felt different. It felt like mine. I brewed a pot of coffee and sat on the porch, wrapped in a thick sweater. The street was empty, damp from the night rain. A few Christmas lights blinked dimly across the way, but the neighborhood was mostly asleep. I listened to the creak of the floorboards under my feet, to the rustle of branches in the wind, to the absence of her voice, not out of grief, not out of spite, but out of relief. There had always been noise in that house growing up. Her footsteps, her instructions, her judgments, even her praise came with a sharp edge. Everything she said shaped the air I breathed. Now there was only my breath, and the house, quiet, not empty. I walked through the rooms slowly. My old bedroom, now spare and clean, the kitchen where nothing waited to be critiqued, the hallway where I once stood, ear pressed to the door, listening for mood swings. I stopped in the living room and sat on the couch, looking at the table. The envelope was still there. I picked it up, opened it again, and read the deed. My name, my house. Not as a symbol, not as a victory, but as closure. I didn't buy it to win. I didn't invite her to prove anything. I think deep down I just wanted her to see it, to know that I'd made peace with what was, and that I didn't need her approval to keep it. She left the house and for once didn't take a piece of me with her. Later that day, I took down the old address numbers from the mailbox, replaced them with new ones, same digits, new font, clean, modern, mine. Then I stepped back, looked at the front of the house and smiled, not because it was home again, but because it finally felt like it had never been.